So we've just come up to the top of the hour, and so everyone who's just joined us in the last few minutes, welcome to the webinar. We're going to be looking at the best ways to exceed customer expectations, and that's quite a tall order because often many contact centers have not quite been able to meet customer expectations, let alone exceed them. So I think it's going to be a fascinating area. I'm Jonty Pierce. I'm your host for today, and I'm delighted to introduce to you two brand new speakers to our webinar program, Colin Shaw and to Jeremy Payne. Colin, you work for Beyond Philosophy, which is a customer experience consultancy. What sort of customer experience projects have you been working on?
We've been working on a number. We've been doing some work with Caterpillar, so all the way from big construction stuff, all the way through to American Express, health insurance companies in the States. In the last 6 months, I've been over to China, Saudi Arabia, all over the place. The whole customer experience is going global.
So, Colin, you're going to be taking us through 5 ways to exceed customer expectations. I think it's going to be a fascinating area. We're also joined today on the news desk by Devon, who's going to be looking at the top tips and questions coming in from the chat room. We'll have a couple of sessions of getting your audience feedback. And delighted to introduce Jeremy Payne from Enghouse to the webinar. Thank you, Jeremy. And you're going to be talking about use of technology to exceed customer expectations. I guess there's a very strong technology angle behind all this.
Yeah, I think it's actually the combination of people, process, and systems. So it's not exclusively technology. Technology alone never achieves anything. It's always the combination of the people and process dynamic in that as well.
So if you're not already logged into the chat room, it's callcenterhelper.com/chat, and you can leave your tips and your questions there. We'll be asking Colin at the end of the webinar to draw a winning tip from all of the tips that come through. Colin, if you'd do that, that would be great. Yep. And there's a bottle of champagne or a box of chocolates for the best tip. I think we've got one of the highest champagne bills of any organisation, though we never get a chance to drink it ourselves. And we can ship that to all sorts of weird and wonderful places. And there is a replay available later on today if you'd like to see that. And then when you're in the chat room, if you'd just like to click on that link and you can get a copy of Jeremy and Colin's slides. So what I want to do is I'd like to start off with a poll, and I'd like to ask, does the service level in your contact center match customer expectations, and where is it on that journey? Do you significantly exceed your customer expectations? Do you somewhat exceed? Do you meet their expectations? Are you below expectations, or are you significantly below? So I think this is going to be quite interesting. It's one of those questions where it might be a different answer if we asked your customers, but we'd like to take your view. Colin, any guesses on where you think the results are going to come?
I would suggest it's going to come up as meet or I think people in call centers tend to be hard on themselves, so maybe even below expectations.
Okay, well, let's have a look at what the audience have said, and so we've got quite a spread there. I think by and large everyone seems to be doing a reasonable job. 51% of the audience are meeting expectations. 24% are slightly ahead of expectations, which is absolutely fascinating. 4% significantly exceeding expectations. So we'd love to hear your take in the audience of what you're doing there. 18% below expectations and 3% significantly below expectations. Quite a nice spread. So you've obviously done something right in the audience. So I'd like to now just drill down a little bit more, and I'd like to ask a question in the chat room, and that is, what have you already tried to do to exceed customer expectations? And in particular, what have you done that has worked? So if you'd just like to type in the chat room, what have you already tried to do to exceed customer expectations? Just takes a little while for everyone to type this in. There'll be some quite nice ones coming through. We've got Mark, Candice, Matthew, Luca, Karen, and Nathaniel and Claire all typing in. Mark has said, we segment customers by using ARPU. I'm not familiar with that take. Mark, if you could highlight what ARPU is. So the more you spend is the quicker you'll get through to an agent. So I guess that's segmentation based by value. Is that something you do a lot of, Jeremy?
It's certainly a phrase that I think is quite well known within mobile telcos. So the large sort of mobile networks definitely kind of work on an ARPU, average revenue per user, analysis.
Very good.
To understand
Mark has just said
their
average revenue per user. Candy says we're proactive or do proactive about calls regarding order details, following people back up. Claire says hi, all keeping a message that the webinar will. Oh, hang on, that's a different one. Candy says, Neil says we've reviewed our entire customer move process to ensure all tariff payment plans and services are covered on the first call and to try and stop repeat contacts. This is something our customers' feedback to us has come through surveys. Helena says we've started to use web update a lot more, which is integrating the contact center with web. Lisa says being able to take ownership and attempt to resolve the call at the first point of contact. Matthew says try and get feedback from customers after the case has been settled. Ballant has said call routing based on ANI, which is the number of people call in, directly to a responsible customer service agent. Dell says that we've been ensuring a swift answer rate on all incoming calls. It's great to see. Speed of response is also said by Karen with dedicated teams. Mark has said another option we've used is using top queries and creating a self-help options in the IVR. So there is less calls to other agents. I think, Jeremy, that's quite a good idea.
Absolutely.
Quite a good one there. And Colin, there's quite a number here about trying to resolve on the first point of contact, which I think is quite a nice idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It helps both the organisation keep the costs down, or not having another call coming in, and obviously customers prefer it as well. So it's a double whammy, absolutely.
So wonderful. So it seems to be, just summarising some of the ones coming in, it seems to be about providing self-service, speed of response, and taking ownership to answer on the first call. So those seem to be three things that seem to be working well. So I'm delighted to pass the baton now across to Colin, and Colin will be taking us through the best ways to exceed customer expectations. So Colin, if you'd like to, I'll just pass the baton across to you. If you'd like to present your slides.
Sure. Just 1 second, I should click the right buttons.
There we go.
And,
that's all up there now.
Cool. Good. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for your time for seeing us today and talking this through. For those of you that don't know me, I've been in customer experience now for some time. Fortunately, I've been recognised by LinkedIn as one of the top business influencers. We've been in the field of customer experience for since 2002, and we've worked a lot. My background actually is call centres, so I often find this area fascinating still. And I've written 4 books on the subject of customer experience. So I'm going to take you a little on a bit of a circuitous route around when to get to the point of expectation. So please bear with me as we go, because I'm trying to sort of set some of the background up of this first. One of the key things that we find that lots of organisations fail to realise is that, and here's a huge surprise, that your customers are people. And oftentimes organizations don't look at a customer experience or from that whole person perspective. What they tend to do is they look at an experience just from a rational and conscious part of the experience. So in terms of the call center, I'm talking about, how quickly the call is answered, how long the person's staying on the phone, all the things that they are conscious of. And yet what we know is that human behavior is driven by the emotional and subconscious parts of an experience. And yet those are not always embraced by an organization. And let me give you when we talk about subconscious, I don't want to sort of turn everybody into psychologists or anything like that, but let me give you an example of that. If you look at this picture and you said to yourself, and if I said to you, have you ever walked down a darkened alley? And as you've walked down the darkened alley, you thought to yourself, yeah, maybe this isn't a good idea. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. So the interesting thing is, what is it that makes you stop? So if you look at this picture now and you think to yourself, what would make you stop? I'm sure a number of you will be going, well, it looks quite narrow. There's not many escape routes. It's clearly dark. There are areas that are hidden that people could be waiting in. There's graffiti on the right-hand side on the wall. The walls are actually quite high. So, I can only go forward or I can only go back. And the point I'm trying to make is this, is that what's happening is, as you're just about to walk down this darkened alley, your subconscious mind, the part of your mind that is working on, in fact, 95% of your brain's processing power is dealt with by the subconscious, and it's picking up all these signals. And as it picks these signals up, it turns around and says, oh, look at the darkened alley, look at the graffiti, look at the size of the walls, look at the darkness. Hey, Colin's just about to walk into some danger. Let's evoke a feeling called fear, and that's going to stop Colin from walking down. And that's what happens. So why am I telling you all this? So there is consequently a rational part of an experience, and this is what most organizations spend most of their time looking at, is this rational part of an experience. So even in Jonty's question of earlier, first time call resolution, very rational part of an experience.
Yeah.
But there is also an emotional part of an experience. And what we know is that over 50% of how a customer feels or an experience is about, over 50% is about how a customer feels. And I know, having worked in the call centers for much of my life, we all know that we have customers who feel frustrated, who get very annoyed, and they display emotions. And again, why am I telling you this? Because the reason that they're feeling emotions can be a lot of the subconscious signals that an organization gives. And you will all know, the classic one that everyone talks about is people say, your call is important to us, and then they keep you waiting for 20 minutes. So there's a conflict there. The subconscious signal could be the tone of the person's voice. It could be the noise in the background. It could be the cadence of the delivery. It could be many different things, okay? But these signals get picked up by customers, get interpreted by customers, and then they start to think about, and then these things start to form an expectation. So, and again, I'll come on to the expectation piece in a moment, but again, just trying to give you a sort of an insight to how we as human beings make choices. So what I wanted you to do is I'm going to flash up some pictures in the next few slides. And I just want you to sit there and look at these pictures, and as fast as you can, I want you to think to yourself, is this an old picture or is it a new picture? So as I flash the slides up, just think to yourself, is this old or is this new? So here comes the first one. So is this picture an old picture or a new picture? And I'm sure you've made your mind up already, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Yeah. Is this picture an old picture or a new picture? And is this one an old picture or a new picture? And finally, is this one an old picture or a new picture? Okay, so now let's just talk about these then for a moment. So the interesting thing is that if you looked at the the popular electronics, undoubtedly you would have said, yeah, that's an old picture. And if we could have a conversation, you would undoubtedly say to me, yeah, the telephone's old, look at the haircut, look at the the color of the magazine. Obviously the picture on the right is an old picture. Again, just look at the dress that the people are wearing. The picture at the bottom, what's the thing that picks it out? It's the coffee cup. Picks it out. But the point I'm trying to get to is this. Human beings, your customers, make decisions instantaneously. You absorb massive amounts of information and you infer things instantaneously. And it probably took you, if you said the word old or new, if you were talking when I asked the question, it probably took you to say longer to say the word old or new than it would do to actually make the decision. The picture on the left-hand side is a bit more difficult because that you probably struggled over, because you look at it and you go, well, it's a picture of something old, but it actually looks like it's been quite painted, quite new, the resolution's quite good. So what does Colin mean by old or new? And therefore you start to struggle. The point I'm trying to make is this. What happens with human beings is we experience something. So we may look at this magazine and human beings want to give things relevance. Okay? So what we do is we look back in our mind and we think about the times where these things have happened to us in the past. So we go, yeah, I remember those haircuts, I remember those telephones, I remember those magazines. The answer to the question is old. So again, why are we talking about this? We're talking about this simply because what this starts to do is this sets an expectation. You call into a call center and it sets an expectation. So when we look at the 5 areas that you need to look at when thinking about and managing your customer's expectation, is my first challenge to you would be, how well do you actually understand your customer's expectations? And this is not just from a rational perspective, but it's from an emotional perspective, and it's from a subconscious perspective. And once you've understood your expectations, oftentimes organizations say to me, we want to exceed our customers' expectations at every moment of contact. And to be totally honest with you, if you're trying to do that, you're mad. And the reason you're mad is because you can't afford it. So which area, what expectation drives most value for you? Which part of your experience drives the most amount of revenue for you? And then from that, you can discover, number 3, what expectation are you trying to exceed? And then start to understand that. And then item 4 is about training people. So typically, when we go into clients, we ask them, how much training do you give to your frontline employees, the call centers, when they join? And typically the answer will be 6 or 7 weeks of training. And we ask them how many people, and what percentage of that is on how to deal with customers. And typically it's a day or something like that. You have to train your people on how to deal with these emotional expectations. And then finally, what we know is that customers' expectations change all the time, and therefore you have to regularly review things. So for me, the critical thing I would like you to take away from this session is that customers don't just have a rational expectation. It's not just about how quickly you answer the phone, the average call handling time, blah, 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 blah. It's also about how does the customer feel, what are their expectations of how they're feeling, and what are the subconscious signs that you're giving customers. And you need to build a great experience, you need to build all of those things. And you can't exceed customers' expectations on everything. So which of those things drives most value for you? And finally, just if you're interested in this whole subject, I've just written an ebook on this subject. We're offering the people on the call here today 50% off. If you go onto our website, you just type in that code there, BP Corp 50, and you can then download the book and at 50% off. But this whole area of trying to unlock the hidden experience and understand the expectations on the hidden experience becomes key. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that, Colin. It does strike me that we spend an awful lot of our time on the rational parts, the things that we can sort of directly build a business case on or get direct measurements from. But the emotional part is one that I think, as you say, we probably miss out. And it's quite fascinating. Your statistic there that around 50% of the customer experience is based on sort of the emotional part of the call, and it's one that we do miss out on. I think your point about in an induction training, which could be say 6 weeks, only spending a day on the emotional part is probably is probably quite missing. In fact, I think on one of the previous webinars we said we're not really in the business of customer experience management. It's really about customer experience memory management, because what we want to do is leave them with a nice memory of the overall experience, even if the first part wasn't quite right. So absolutely some fascinating ones there. Some quite interesting comments coming through on the chat room as you put the as you put some of those up, and quite an interesting one was asking what the definition of new was. So I think that's also, we're looking at the rational part of it rather than the emotional. So thanks very much, Colin. We're going to jump across to the chat room now. Devon's been manning the chat room. So Devon, what's been going on? Have we got any hints and tips and questions coming through?
Yeah, so we've got a busy chat room today. We're going to start with a tip today from Colleen that says, we have service recovery where we get feedback from customers on level of satisfaction of how their complaint was handled, customer retention. We've got an opinion now, and I really like this opinion, from Luca that says, we find that for the clients that fully understand their SLA response time, they are happy with our service, and many times they comment how we've helped so quickly. For clients who aren't completely clear on their SLA, they tend to have a less positive outlook on our service. We're spending time reviewing SLAs for each client and discussing the response time with our key contacts. The customers appreciate the time and attention. Colin, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I definitely think that, focusing on the SLAs and trying to get them to, getting customers to or achieve the SLAs is definitely the right thing to do. And the response time is absolutely critical, because response time starts to show that you value the customer's time, that you're interested, you're not wasting their time, and it quickly is in our day and age is and responsiveness is absolutely key.
Absolutely. We've got another opinion from Candice that says, the tone and how information is delivered plays a big part in customer subconscious signals. We've got a question now. What is your opinion on self-service for customers, and do you consider that it can be a disadvantage to your business as it reduces interaction? Jeremy, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we'll pick up on later in the presentation, but I think it's coming up with this concept of, is it digital by default or digital by design? And I think if you look at most customers today, they have a huge amount of power within their pocket on a smartphone, and most customers are willing to self-serve. So the opportunity to push self-service is right, but it's not right for all customers, and it's not right for all interaction types. So that's why we sort of tend to talk about digital by design as opposed to digital by default.
And self-service does also tend to be self-selecting.
Yeah.
So, the thing is not to force people down it, I guess, but people who like self-service will self-serve, and presumably people like phoning in will phone in.
Absolutely.
So I guess there's a preference there.
Thank you. Another question now. What would be the best practice for reducing wait time for clients who telephone in? We have noticed that a number of callers hang up during the Welcome to Company X welcome announcement. The aim is to reduce the amount of abandoned calls before they arrive at an agent queue. Colin, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, I mean, without understanding the detail of it, but I mean, it's a pretty, if you've got customers hanging up during that, Welcome to Company X, then it's probably just too long. That's obviously a big indication that you're just not getting to people fast enough.
Jeremy?
Yeah. I mean, I think from a technology point of view, one of the things that we've seen some of our customers adopting very quickly is this concept of queue buster. So if you have a sudden spike in calls and people are going to be made to wait in a queue much longer than they may have ideally wanted to, it will push to their phone to say, you're position 20 in the queue, you're likely to have a wait time of X minutes. Would you like us just to kind of call you back? But better still, what the technology does is just hold them on the server through an internet connection. So they're not actually paying to wait. They hold their position in the queue, and then when they get to position 2 in the queue, their phone rings back and they're back in the game. So it allows the customer to kind of go off merrily, do their own thing, and not kind of just sit there idly waiting and watching themselves move up the list, and of course saves them money as well.
Brilliant, thank you for that. We've got an opinion now from Dal that says, being open and transparent is really important, but equally communicating to your customers about what's happening inside and outside your business can improve the customer's expectations and their perceptions. I like that one, that's good.
I guess there's a danger on this that a lot of this in businesses is sort of quite hidden. The internal processes, or at least the companies think it's quite hidden, and the concept of the sort of transparent organization, which I think really came in with some of the parcel delivery companies who then started tracking where the parcel was it's quite a shocking concept for a lot of people. Colin, do you tend to find that's quite an interesting concept that is starting to go into like the emotional side of how companies work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, if you just think about being open and transparent, that's about trust. Yeah, what you're trying to evoke in your customers by being transparent is trying to evoke trust. What organizations, again, tend to not want to do is be transparent, because they know that if customers were to look inside, then that they see some of the challenges that we have. So I absolutely agree, being open and transparent is important, because it can actually build the relationship. We know sometimes when things go wrong, people know that things are going to go wrong occasionally, but it builds that trust if you are open and transparent.
Perfect, thank you. I think we've got time for one question. Colin, this one's for you, I think. Shouldn't those rational and conscious things drive the emotional and subconscious?
Yeah, so it's all interlinked. So it's absolutely interlinked. But I guess the issue is understanding what's causing something. So, for instance, we were doing some work in Saudi Arabia. And one of the ordering forms in Saudi Arabia was written in English and Spanish, not in Saudi. That's a pretty obvious sign that the organization's not thinking about it. So, you go into a bank and they put pens on change, which says that they don't trust you. So it's all interlinked. Rational things absolutely drive emotions and they deliver subconscious signals. The issue goes back to, is it deliberate? You know, have you really thought about it? Have you considered the implication of these things?
Perfect, thank you. John T, back to you.
Thank you very much for that, Devon. I think some fascinating questions and opinions there, some real food for thought, and I guess some of the emotional triggers we can often send out. The great news is some of the technology, which we'll come on to in a little bit, is that increasingly you can measure an awful lot more things. So you can start doing experiments with different techniques and see what works. Okay, we're going to have a look at expectations now. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to jump in with an audience question. And I would like to say, as a consumer, what is your expectation on how long you would like to wait for an email to be answered? Is it 15 minutes? Is it an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week that you'd expect an email to be answered on? So as a consumer, how long would you expect to wait? Or would you like to wait for an email to be answered? We'd just like to get a few more votes in from the we've got about 3 more people to vote here, and we'll just show the results up on the screen. So as a consumer, it looks like the average is most people would be prepared to wait for a day to be answered. There's certainly no one's prepared to, 1% is prepared to wait for a week. Sample size here is 129. So that's quite fascinating, and just like to have a look at the other side of expectations. Saying, and I'd like to ask the question of, in your contact center, what is your target answer time to handle emails? So if you'd just like to put the details up on the screen. So what's your target time for handling of emails? Jeremy, do you expect there to be much difference from what we've seen in terms of expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, people would expect an email answered, you know, fairly rapidly.
Well, let's have a look at the results. Well, it's a kind of wider spread in what we're doing. We've obviously got some people who are very good at overachieving expectations. We've got a small number doing it within 15 minutes and an hour. Perhaps worryingly, we've got 15% of the audience are over a day to handle an email back up to a week, and that certainly seems to be outside of expectations. So I think there's quite a spread there. So I guess we've got some people doing very better than expectations, and others not quite so good. So I guess there's also a technology angle in this. So I'm going to pass the baton across to Jeremy Payne from Enghouse. Jeremy, if you'd like to take us through your thoughts on what things we could be doing to improve and exceed customer expectations. I think it would be fascinating to see.
Yeah, sure. So I think probably one of the first things to do is just to sort of take a step back and understand 2 pieces of context. One is the context within most organizations today, because you know there is a cost to customer experience, and it's understanding what you get back for that cost. And so you know, it's not a spelling mistake on there. It is deliberately written as customer service. So some organizations still have that culture of looking upon customer service as a necessary evil, something that lots of money goes into and not a lot comes back out of. And some really interesting research. We commissioned some research with one of the UK's major polling companies and got back some really interesting feedback. This one is to do with brand. And when you look at that statistic, it's possibly not an enormous surprise, but it should be hugely concerning to most organizations that people that have, you know, will base their decision in terms of the amount of money that they're prepared to spend with an organization based on that brand's reputation. And one of the easiest ways to bring that to life is to think about yourself stood at Heathrow Airport and you're flying on holiday to Spain. There's 2 identical planes. The ticket price is exactly the same, and one's got a Ryanair sticker on it and the other's got a BA sticker on it. Then you have to make a decision, which brand are you going to go with? And immediately, most people have a brand connotation and perception and make a decision based on that. And I would guess most people on the phone and on the webinar are probably thinking they'll get on the BA flight. So there is a real value in terms of getting this stuff right. Another piece of research, this was commissioned by NetScout. You can find it on the web if you just type in Help Scout. Interestingly, we also commissioned research. We came up with almost identical figures, and Gartner also commissioned research. Our one came out with 85% of customers would abandon. Gartner's is 87, and the NetScout one is bang in the middle at 86, which is actually quite an alarming number. When you think about how business used to be and a customer for life and that type of concept, customers are incredibly transient these days. When you look at the 51% statistic, people will give you one opportunity to solve it. They'll phone your customer service department or your help desk once, and if you're not solving their problem in a way or speed at which they want, they're likely to become one of the 86% that walk. So, what are customers really looking for? Inevitably, they're looking, for better interactions, and that's a huge factor in terms of the amount of ongoing money they're likely to spend with an organization. But more importantly, competent staff. So again, to bring that to life, for anyone that's done or dealt with First Direct, or anyone that's walked into a John Lewis store, you're normally refreshingly surprised at the competence of the staff member that's dealing with you. It's higher than your expectation, and generally the service you get back. So whilst it might sound like an odd thing for a guy from a technology company to be saying, technology alone is never going to be the total answer. It's people and human, and the interconnect between the technology and the people is absolutely key.
Because on that competence of staff at John Lewis, I phoned up their contact centre, wanted to know a particular dimension of a fridge. They phoned through to a store and got one of the guys off the store to get a tape measure and go and measure it. It wasn't just, we'll get back to you. So it's about competence of staff and the environment that they're trained in, I guess.
Yeah, and I think as we'll get into sort of interaction types in a second, that will become even more transparent as to why we believe that's key. So what's driving consumer behavior out there? Well, one of the huge trends, not a huge surprise to people, but the consumerization of technology. So right now in this country, 3% of total GDP is spent on consumer tech. So if you look around your own life and home and friends and family, most people have got a smartphone, most people have got a tablet, children may have a PlayStation, you may have a smart TV, the list goes on. Alarmingly, maybe for businesses, is consumers are outspending organizations, including government, the whole lot grouped together. Consumers are outspending that by a ratio of 10 to 1. So in terms of expectations are being set in the consumer technology world. So as an example, there used to be a time when people thought video conferencing, being able to do a video phone call with somebody, was going to be hugely complex and quite an expensive thing to do. You needed big servers and lots of cables and all the rest of it. And then along came Apple and put FaceTime on everyone's phone, and suddenly people realized through a no-cost IP phone call or connection they could FaceTime somebody on the other side of the world, and it seemed to work pretty well. So there's an expectation that's been set there in the consumer mindset of how things should work, how intuitive they should work, and a certain kind of cost. Interesting to think about where that's heading, and if you think about smartphone usage over the next 5 years, most of you right now have just been issued from your bank with a facility payment card, so you don't need to push it into the machine and type your PIN number anymore. You can just tap and go up to a value of £20. Over the next 5 years, that's more likely going to be your phone is going to be the tap and go device as opposed to a card. Again, interesting when we think about big data and location-based services. This is a website in America that tracks your location. So most of you have got a smartphone in your pocket right now, and when you downloaded any application onto that phone, it will have asked you, are you happy to share your location or use location-based services? And you'll have more than likely just clicked yes. And so every application on there Google and all the others know exactly within probably a 15-meter radius where you are on the planet at any given time. Why is that interesting? It's interesting in the context of Sugar because they sell that information to retailers who have a physical store. So as you walk down a high street, your location is being shared with people, and those people will push a real-time promotional code to you to say, come to our store today and we'll give you X discount. Another company, a shoe retailer, has taken it a step further. They've mapped all their competitors' stores. So they now know when you're loitering or lingering near one of their competitors' stores, we'll send you a real-time discount code to say, cross over the street, come to our store. If you buy something in the next hour, we'll give you 50% off. So hugely powerful information. How's that relevant to yourself if you're running a contact center now? But the point that I guess I'm trying to make here is that there is a huge amount of contextual information out there about your customers. You just have to reach out and take it. Really, really simple stuff like caller line identification is the most simplest one that you can take. But that will save a huge amount of effort for that customer in their interaction with you as you move along down the line. Another driver that's been hugely powerful and is driving kind of consumer behavior is social media. Colin talked about the word trust in his presentation. And if you think about trust, people trust peer-to-peer views probably more highly than they do of the company they're buying from. Most of you will have been on TripAdvisor when you were booking a holiday or a restaurant or anything else. So you value that opinion. And what's interesting is that when you think about UK contact centres, 80% of them were in existence before social media came along. So take a step back for a second. Think about the people, the process, the systems, the policies within some of those contact centres and question, are they properly aligned for this new world order? And some of them will be and some of them won't. Also look at it and think it's not necessarily bad news. There was that time when organizations had that one-to-many relationship with their customers and their customers were largely powerless. Peer-to-peer networking, social media gave consumers a voice. It allowed them to form communities and groups and share bad news and experience very quickly. But there are companies out there that have recognized that as a positive. And so when we think about Sony have nearly 1 million PlayStation users worldwide, spread across pretty much every country that's got electricity. So in terms of providing customer service and support to that, it's quite a complex problem. And then you would ask yourself, well, how many people would you need to provide a decent level of customer service to that group of, 1 million customers? And the answer is really quite surprising. It's 5. 5 people support 1 million customers. And the reason they're able to do that is they've harnessed the power of the community, they've harnessed the power of the social group, and they empower customers to help other customers. So if you think about most organizations, I was at an event in London yesterday presenting to a group of people from the public sector, and there's a huge wealth of experience that's within the public sector that's been pensioned off early retirement age, walked out the door. But there's a huge amount of resource. Your customers are a huge resource, and many of them are willing to help each other. giffgaff Mobile is another example. They don't really have a formal customer service department. They rely on power users to help other customers, and they reward those users with 3 minutes and X amount of downloads and all the rest of it. But for many of those people, if you've ever posted on TripAdvisor, you're not really doing it for money. You're doing it for the social good, to have your voice heard. So I guess the point is, it's not all bad news. There's a huge resource there that you can tap into if you do it right, and many of the successful companies we work with are doing just that. Another thing to talk about, and we heard this earlier when in the very start of the session when we had ARPU came up and segmentation of customer average revenue per user. Really important to think about how you segment your customers. So if you think, if you've got as much grey hair as me, and dare I say it, Jonty, we're probably Generation X, and we sort of sneakily bought a fashionable phone and are trying to be Generation Y. Your children or my children, Generation Z. if you sit a child under the age of 5 right now in front of a computer, it doesn't matter what type of computer or where you are, the first thing that child's going to do is reach out and try and swipe the screen. Generation swipe. Again, there's an expectation of how things should work and flow. Generation Y live their life through that mobile device. So hugely sort of literate people, huge amount of power in their pocket, and those kind of people are going to be prepared to self-serve. Generation X perhaps prefer the voice channel. So interesting piece of research from the Telegraph that looks at the use of a mobile phone, and again there's a whole bunch of surveys out there, and it's pretty consistent across the world when you look at these type of research, which shows sort of voice at a lower level in terms of the use of the phone. That doesn't mean when people are interacting with your organization or trying to interact to receive customer service that the graph is going to look like that. But what it does give you is a pretty good precursor. If you're building a customer experience strategy for the next 5 years, it gives you a pretty good idea of where you need to start to be making some investments, not just in systems, but also people and process. Again, at the start of the session, we heard about the importance of email. This is taken from the NCHOW survey that's free to download from our website. And again, we came up with exactly the same result, that email is a very important channel. Mm-hmm. But as we discussed at the top of the hour, there is a balance between the skills you need to be able to answer calls quickly and effectively and professionally, and the skills you need to be able to respond in a timely way in email. And quite often they're different skills and maybe even be in different departments or groups. So you need that kind of ability to triage and route. And one of the last things to consider, what's driving your consumers and their behavior, is the concept of the age of interruption. So most people these days live pretty busy lives. And most people are quite shocked when they see this slide, and then they actually pause and reflect and think, actually, yeah, that sounds an awful lot like my life. Most people in a given working day will receive 56 interruptions. Most people won't work continuously on any single activity for more than 3 minutes before they're interrupted and switched to something else. So when you take a step back and think about that, in most people's working lives, they're working on something for 3 minutes, then they toggle and switch to something else, or they're interrupted and start a new activity. Ask yourself, how long and how much time do you think people are going to be prepared to invest in sitting, waiting in a queue, or not receiving the service they want? So the point is that the time frame in which you need to be able to deliver good customer experience has got an awful lot shorter, and people expect answers quickly. And we were talking earlier, weren't we, about web chat and email and the dynamic between the two, and how sometimes people will switch that channel just for the fact that they want immediacy of response.
I love this slide. I think it's so critical, really.
Yeah.
That, 56 interruptions a day. That's a lot. And 3 minutes. I think we just often presume that when we got the caller on the phone, we've got all the time in the world.
Yeah. And quite often that caller, whilst you've got them on the call, they're probably multitasking, doing something else. They're probably looking at their email. They may have a chat window over. They may be texting somebody. They may be browsing the internet. So there's another concept there, which is coined by Linda Stone at Microsoft, which is that concept of continuous partial attention.
Yeah.
And the ability to sort of multitask and manage several things at once with partial attention. So if that's the context, that's the business context and the environment that businesses are operating within, this is some of the things that are driving the customer and their behavior. How do you best respond to it? And I guess one of the questions is, shouldn't we just exceed customer expectations? Let's go over the top. Let's really exceed what, in terms of SLAs, in terms of timing, all of the above. And it's a really interesting piece of research from Harvard Business Review that showed that when companies did exceed expectations significantly, it resulted in no additional loyalty, no additional spend, and actually set them up for a fall. because quite often that service and that exceptional service was received in one particular channel, and when the customer went back and received service in a different channel or at a different time, the expectation fell short. So what customers really want is an easy life and good quality, consistent service. And when we think about customer effort, which is a really important way of measuring loyalty and satisfaction, the more you ask a customer to work, the more you ask them to switch channels, the more information you ask them for, the more forms you ask them to fill in, you're making that customer work, you're increasing effort, and you're pushing satisfaction down. And one of the things I sort of use here as an analogy is to think about, you've all purchased something from Amazon, and if you look at how easy Amazon has made it for you, A, to find what you want, B, make some cross or upsell recommendations to you based on what you like and other people like you have also bought, and how quickly it is to check out and pay for it. You can do that within 3 clicks. Very, very minimal amount of effort required from you to spend money. And it's deliberate. They put a huge amount of effort in terms of applying technology to reduce the amount of time and effort you need to put in to getting what you want. And most customers are after the same thing. So in terms of tips or things that we see in the high-performing customers that we have worldwide, they're empowering their customers with the tools to self-serve. And the great news about empowering customers with self-service is many customers want it. It allows them to interact with you 24/7, 365. And the real win-win is the customer is happy, and it's hugely, hugely cost-effective. It saves you an enormous amount of money. Yet there is a trap, and there is a trap that is very easy to fall into, particularly when you think about the very first slide when we talked about customer service as opposed to customer service. Many organizations, when they've made that saving, will pocket the money, put it there and say, great, we've saved some money in the customer experience arena. Let's move on. We're a much profitable business. And that's a real mistake, because the reality is, by definition, if more and more interactions are being solved through the self-service channels, the ones that are left that come into your contact center are by definition going to be complex, because the customer's probably already tried to solve it themselves on their phone or through your website or through a user forum or a knowledge management system. So you then have to think about the staff within your business and who is best placed to solve that complex inquiry. And they're quite often not sat within the contact center themselves. They're sat within the extended enterprise, and you need to be able to reach out to them and connect to them. Use technologies like Helly Hansen did, using Microsoft Lync or Skype for Business to identify presence, work out within your organization, based on the customer, based on what they're trying to do, who do we have available online that is best suited to solve that inquiry and make that connection. And don't use people in contact centers as a human switch, because it creates customer effort, customer dissatisfaction, and actually drives morale of the contact center agent down because they're not able to solve the problem. One of the other things to think about is anticipate and avoid problems. So if you think about your bank statement, 99% of the things that go through your bank statement just happen, straight through process, no exceptions, no problems. The 1% of things that are a problem, cost quite a lot of time and effort to resolve. And if you think about a courier company, when you've ordered that item from Amazon and you're waiting for it to be delivered, you get very good proactive communication from the courier company these days. You'll get a text to say your parcel has been picked, your parcel has been shipped, your parcel is going to be delivered on Wednesday. Your parcel is going to be delivered on Wednesday between 2 and 3 p.m. by a driver called Dave. If you're not happy with any of these, they're giving you options all the time. And the reason for that is it's hugely expensive for Dave to turn up to your house and you're not in to sign for the parcel, and he doesn't know whether he can leave it with a neighbor or not. So they're trying to avoid that dissatisfaction where you get home and you haven't got the parcel, and they're also trying to reduce their costs. So being proactive where you know that there's likely to be problems is a really good way of reducing costs and increasing customer experience, and Cardiff Council is a great example of that. And finally, just to think about is you get what you measure. So we talked earlier about John Lewis and First Direct. If you're measuring people on time, how much time they're spending with a customer, as opposed to measuring on customer effort and customer outcomes, you're probably measuring the wrong thing. Because if you start to think about the concept, by definition, those interactions have become a lot more complex. So they're quite a lot harder to quantify in terms of classic measurements of things like average handle time. So measuring things like customer effort, how hard are you making the customer work? Did the customer at the end of the interaction get the outcome they wanted? If you've got those things in place, you can do really well. And there's a whole bunch of technology out there. When Colin talked about the emotional side of interactions, technology that can listen to both sides of a phone call and understand whether the customer's getting agitated, the agent's getting agitated, whether somebody's used a swear word or the wrong phrase, all of that can be measured in real time and escalated to people. So yeah, with that said, and in the essence of time, that's me done. I'll hand back to John T.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I'm certainly going to be taking away the 58 interruptions a day. I think I need to get a little clicky count to see how many I have during the course of the day. But I think that the serious one is that you only have 3 minutes before switching tasks, so we really do need to get the maximum we can into a short period of time. We're now going to jump across to Devon on the chat room. Devon, what comments have we got coming through on the chat room?
Yeah, so we've got an opinion in from Colleen that says, most of our compliments in the call centre are with regards to how we make the customer feel. The rational part of the call service is expected to be excellent. The soft skills part of the call is seldom met or exceeded, so the customer immediately notices when it's exceeded. We've got another opinion in by Joe that says, we believe that it is important to respond within 24 hours. Even if we do not have a definitive answer, we use the opportunity to set the customer's expectations. Jeremy, what do you think of this one?
Yeah, again, it ties in perfectly with that being proactive. If you've got a complex inquiry or interaction that you may not be able to solve quickly, but you've been proactive, you're keeping the customer up to date, you're letting them know that you haven't forgotten them, you are still working on it, you've got their goodwill with you. When you abandon people and just leave people hanging and then they've got to make another phone call to find out what you've just told them, you've created a lot of customer effort, so absolutely the right thing to do.
Brilliant, thank you. Another opinion now. Over 50% of our customers prefer emails as it's a traceable. We've got a tip in from Suzette that says, Gen Y will mostly be on the company's website while talking to the agent on the phone, i.e. if they are not able to get the answer to their query, they want the answer and they want it now. Staff need to be multi-skilled to do both. Mind you, not everyone can talk and chat at the same time. And we're going to finish today with an opinion from Claire that says, our customers are growing to love live chat, the best of both worlds. Back to you, John T.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Devon. Certainly some quite interesting comments there. And I think this sort of blend of rational and emotional is really quite a key part on that. Colin, what's your take of the feedback from the audience on the rational emotional part?
Yeah, I mean, I think Suzette just summed it up for me, to be honest with you. Obviously, the rational side is the what. Yeah, I'm phoning up to get this problem resolved. Organizations can excel at that, but it's the how, and it's the how that people do things, and that's the more emotional side of things. That's the bit that people remember. And when you're starting dealing with this sort of the world in a transactional way, then that's something that everybody can do. The differentiator, and John T, you talked about John Lewis and First Direct, their differentiator is much more in the how. Yeah, feeling that that you're talking to somebody that's knowledgeable, because that drives trust. Feeling that someone's going to actually deal with your problem and own it, and you're confident with them, again, drives trust, feeling cared for. So I think it's it's the how that becomes key.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very, very much for that. We're reaching the end of the hour now. So if you could just put into the chat room in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about today's webinar? If you could type those into the chat room, it would be fascinating to see what you like best about the webinar. I'll be asking Colin in a short while to, Colin, I'll give you a quick call on your mobile afterwards to get the winning tip. We'll announce that on Twitter. Slides are available on Call Center Helper, and if you want to watch the replay, which will be available in about an hour's time, that's at callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. I know a lot of you like to share these with your team and also with your management teams as well, so you can watch that. And I'd just like to say thank you to our 2 speakers. Colin Shaw, thank you very much for joining us for your first Call Center Helper webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck to everybody.
And Jeremy, it's been delightful to have you online as well.
My pleasure.
So just like to thank everyone in the audience. We'll be back here same time next week. And if you'd like to complete the survey as you leave the webinar. Thanks very much, and see you all next week. Bye-bye.